Hello everybody, this is Valsadal from Derailed Blog, and thanks for joining me on this particularly hot day, why I picked to do this filming. But today we are taking a look at this guy. This is the Abus Detecto 7000 RS1 disc brake lock. And this is a device that is meant to go onto your bike's disc rotor and essentially keep it from being rolled away by anyone who doesn't have your permission to do so. So in this review, we'll be taking a close look at the lock, discussing its capabilities, and hopefully allowing you to make an informed decision if you choose to buy something like this. Before we jump into it all, I just want to preface by saying what this lock is and what it isn't. So this really is not your full end-to-end security solution for your motorcycle. This is a way to get into security, keep your bike relatively safe, but it's not going to keep a really determined thief from getting your bike away from you. Unfortunately, I actually know this all too well. I used a lock very similar to this one, actually the Detecto RS3, the slightly cheaper model, to secure my Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R. And over a long weekend, I left and came back to see that my bike was taken away. The thieves in that case probably just came in, stashed the bike into a van or something similar, and made off on their way. And unfortunately, even this lock, this is a little bit more expensive, has more features, won't prevent that from happening. So what is a disc brake lock like this used for? This is really your first line of defense against what I like to call opportunistic thefts. So what do I mean by that? For instance, let's say you are visiting a friend's place and you park in their parking lot. Maybe you're going downtown to a restaurant or stopping by a store to pick up a few things. Either way, you're leaving your bike unattended for a little while. In that time, let's call them a less than outstanding citizen, might walk by, think, oh hey, nice bike, I want to make it my own, and choose to take it. So this lock will hopefully keep that from happening. Anything more serious, if you are leaving your bike long-term storage or something like that, you'll really want to look into chains, a chain lock or something similar. I'll talk about that too in a bit. But anyways, let's take a closer look at this lock and see how it actually functions. So first of all, right off the bat, you'll see we have this plastic cover with the Abus logo on it. This color scheme, they call it Sonic Red, I believe, and obviously I picked it to match the Triumph. Yeah, that's about as much style stuff as I know. In the front, we have the keyhole, so that's how you unlock and lock the lock. This is what the key looks like. Hopefully you can get a closer look over there through this camera as well. This is what they call a dimple key, where you'll notice that instead of a regular toothed edge like they use in typical tumbler locks, this has these little dimples. Now, in terms of security, I did look into it. These can be picked just as easily as a regular tumbler lock. You do need a little bit of different hardware, but honestly, if somebody knows what they're doing, they will be able to get into a lock like this. Now, it might not be the most convenient thing, and secondly, there is also an alarm feature here. So this lock is going to yell if someone starts tampering with it, but just for you to know, almost no lock is totally pick safe. And there's lots of other YouTube channels and videos devoted to stuff like that. On the front, this little thing is actually the LED. So this lights up. It has two colors, red and green. It's going to let you know when the lock is armed and if your battery is running low. Flipping to the back side of things, we see right away this square bolt. And this is what actually goes into the lock and will hopefully do its job of remaining on your rotor so that nobody takes your bike away. This right here is a metal cover that houses the batteries. They're in there, and at the same time, pressing down on this is actually what activates the lock. So how it works is, and I'll show in a second, you slip it over your rotor, you press it down, but until you actually push this little part in, it's not going to be armed. It's actually kind of nice because it allows you to transport the lock just sort of in this position without worrying about it being armed and then beginning to yell when it's in your backpack or something like that moving around. So let's open it up. There we go. I've always done this on the bike, so it's a little weird to do it here. And I think that's it. Oh, another note is that the batteries, the manual says they're good for around 1 year, and it's just 2 AAA batteries that need to go into it. Abus also provides a little carrying pouch that comes with the lock, so it's kind of nice if you do take it places. And they also have a reminder cable. This is just a coiled cable that slips onto here and allows you to attach it, for instance, to your handlebars, maybe to your rear footrest or something like that, just to remind you that the lock is on. Now, I use this lock pretty much everywhere I go. I know it's going to be on my bike, so I've stopped using that cable. But let's check out the lock in action. Before I hook it up, you have a decision to make. Is it going on the front? Is it going, pardon me, is it going on the front? Is it going on the back? A lot of the promotional pictures show the lock on the front, and then the reminder cable goes up there and it looks really nice and slick. But if you give it some thought, that might not be the best place to put it. Pretend you are a thief, because we really have to approach a lot of these situations from that perspective. If the lock is on the front, so let's say it's locked over there, meaning I can't move the front wheel. You'd also most likely, lock your steering. That's a good security measure too. So this is not going to go anywhere. What I can do in that case is I can come to the bike, throw it into neutral, pick up the front. I might have a friend helping me do this because it might be a little heavy. But I pick it up, and in one fell swoop, I've completely bypassed all your security measures. I've bypassed your steering lock. I've bypassed your disc brake lock as well. Now, if we take this and let's say it gets attached to the rotor over there, what are we looking at now? Well, the rear wheel is not going to move anywhere. The front has the steering lock on it. So if it's just me or me and a buddy trying to steal your bike, if we pick up the rear, because we have to in order to get the wheel spinning, we're going to have to fight with the lock on here, the steering lock. And I know it's not the end of the world. Like if you're doing it, if you're in there, yeah, you're just going to have to kind of move it on an angle or something, or stop every once in a while, reposition the bike. But it's your role to make it as difficult as possible for anybody out there that really wants to pick up your bike. So something small like putting it on the back as well. If someone just if someone's out there to take rims or something like that, I mean, it's actually kind of a tough call which rim is more expensive, because there you have 2 rotors typically. Here you have 1 rotor, but also the sprocket. So I don't know, up to you, but I always go for the rear. So let's actually put this on and we can take a closer look. So if you can see that it just slides in, locked, but not armed yet. To arm it, all you do is just push it in. And then you give it a second. There we go. That noise tells you it's on. And you should see every once in a while this red LED will blink. There we go. And that's pretty much it. So now it's armed. And let's run through a few tests and see how well something like this will actually work. So first things first, let's really pick the most innocent situation why that lock might go off. Perhaps it's your first or second time or first week using it and you forget that it's on. It happened to me as well before I got used to having it on all the time. So you walk up to your bike from the other side, you forget that it's there, and you go to turn your bike on. So let's actually see if just turning the bike on is going to be enough to trigger it. All right. Oh, here you can hear it. It is yelling. All right, so let's turn this off. And you can see this is still going. And then open it up. Okay. So opening it does unarm it as well, and that's pretty much all you need to do. So I think that was a good first test. The alarm started yelling, started screaming as soon as I turned on the bike. And as I mentioned, if you just walk up and you forget that, and sorry, another thing to mention, you were able to hear it over the sound of the exhaust as well. So that is important to note, because if it's just there and you can't hear it, you're going to ride off and really damage something from the get-go. So that was the first. Let's turn this off. Let's reattach it, and we're going to try a more nefarious situation where I am a thief and I walk up and I want to roll the bike away. So same thing as before. It's on. Let's wait for it to arm. All right. We walk up, and all we're going to do is we're going to lift the bike as though I'm taking it. Oh, okay. It went off. Honestly, it went off a little bit later than I thought, but it still went off, right? Maybe it just needed a second to register everything, but I lifted it. There is, they call it, I think they have some marketing gimmicky name for it, 3D detection system. But it worked. So if it worked in that situation of just tilting the bike off its axis, I'm pretty confident it's going to work in anything more serious, whether you lift up the rear of the bike or anything like that. Now, at the same time, it is important to test the other side of sensitivity, because high sensitivity typically is a good thing. You want the alarm to go off so that you hear it, so that other people hear it. But let's say you leave your bike outside, as some people do. Every time the wind blows, you don't really want this thing going off. And I've read online reviews. There's other manufacturers out there, not too many, that make comparable products. There's one called Xena, and I was reading online reviews and they said sometimes, yeah, just wind will trigger the lock. In my experience, I don't really park outside, so it's hard for me to tell, but let's reattach it. Let's just run through some kind of typical things that you might be doing where you don't want your alarm to go off. All right. So, for instance, let's say I am walking up to my bike. I have my jacket. I want to put it on. Let's kind of throw it. Put these on. Key, mess around with it a little bit. You know, I'm wearing my helmet, but I would typically put it there. Okay, so I'm kind of shaking up the bike, and it's not going off. So I think that's good. Let's sort of try from this side. Okay. So you can imagine if there's wind that's sort of rocking your bike, then that's okay. It's not going off. Another step to this is taking the lock off without triggering it. You don't want to trigger it every single time you're going to go deaf. So around 80% of the time, I'm able to do this, and I hope I can do it for the video too. So let's go. Now, when I do it, I do kind of have to hold it. And there we go. So you can still take it off fairly easily without triggering the alarm, and as I mentioned, without going deaf every single time. All right, so I would call that a success. I think the lock works well for its intended purpose. It goes off when it needs to. It doesn't go off when it doesn't need to. And overall, I think it's a solid purchase. So what do you get when you actually buy the lock? Well, of course, the lock itself. You get more than just one key. I have one on me, but this is 2 or 3, I believe, that actually come with it in case you lose it. And as well, this is that carrying pouch I mentioned before. So if you want, you could kind of slide that into there like this or the other way and just take it around with you. Of course, you don't have to worry about the alarm going off, so that's kind of nice too. The reminder cable, which I just don't use, I don't know where I have mine anymore, but that comes with it as well. So the last topic of discussion, I think, is does the Abus Detecto 7000 RS1 disc brake lock have a ridiculously long name? Yes, it really does. Why does it need to be called the Detecto 7000? I don't know. Just drop the 7000 Abus. Just leave it the Detecto RS1, 2, and 3. Is this worth the money? I would say it is. So I picked this up it was on sale, and yet it still cost me 155 Canadian dollars. That's not cheap. That's quite a bit of money for something like this. But at the same time, it's sort of knowledge. I'm not going to say common knowledge, but a lot of people say be prepared to spend 10% of your machine's cost on securing it, whether it's a motorcycle or even a bicycle. Be prepared to spend quite a bit amount of money. So if we take that 10% into account, this is 150. I still have another 550 or so Canadian bucks to go before I get to 10% of the bike's cost. Is it effective? I think it is. Now, as I mentioned, I had the other model, the RS3, which, by the way, the RS3, very insensitive. The alarm, you really had to pretty much kick the damn thing for it to go off. And as a result, I can't recommend that product. As you saw here, this one works much, much better. Regardless, I still had my bike stolen when I had one of these on. So this is not going to be everything that you need to secure the bike. I paired this up with a chain. So I did go out and bought a pretty heavy duty chain with some big beefy links on it that I use. I hook, actually, it's quite a short chain, and so that goes around my car's rim, and then either the bike's rim or right over here I have this little cross member that I just loop it through. And with that combination, I feel pretty secure that if someone tries to mess with the bike, first of all, they're going to set off the alarm, and secondly, the chain is going to keep it there in place. And I do recommend sprouting for something like that. You do have to spend the money if you want to keep your machine, well, yours, until you're ready to part with it. So that's it for the Abus Detecto. I hope this was a good video. You enjoyed it. You're able to make a good purchase decision whether you're going to grab the Abus or a Xena or something else. 155 on sale, a little bit more expensive than almost any other Xena lock out there, but a good amount cheaper than Abus's own Granite series. So that's also, they're alarmed. They look a little bit beefier too, but really what you want to get there is the alarm on it. If you happen to have already some kind of security on your bike, maybe a detection system that goes off whenever somebody comes close to your bike, unless you have the fob, those are pretty cool. The alarm's going to go off. You might just be good with a cheaper disc lock to strictly immobilize your bike. But once again, if someone really wants to take your bike, they're not going to let a little pesky alarm stop them from doing so. So that's it. Thanks everybody for watching. Ride safe out there. Keep your bikes where they belong, in their own parking spots. Don't let anybody else take them. And if you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. Thanks very much.